My dear friends, we live in a world where noise is glorified. Opinions are shouted, emotions are displayed loudly, and every little irritation is broadcasted like a breaking news headline. But have you ever observed someone who doesn't raise her voice yet her silence says everything? That is the power of a silent woman. Let me tell you something profound today. A silent woman understands what noise will never teach. You see, silence isn't weakness. Silence is wisdom. It's a choice. It's not because she doesn't know what to say. It's because she knows it's not always worth saying. Silence is often misunderstood. Most people associate it with weakness, submission, or lack of knowledge. But in truth, silence is one of the strongest responses a person, especially a woman, can offer in a world that thrives on noise, drama, and reaction. A silent woman isn't someone who doesn't have opinions or emotions. She's someone who has mastered herself enough to not let every situation provoke her. This is a form of strength that very few people possess. It's easy to speak out of anger. It's easy to react immediately when someone hurts you, offends you, or disrespects you. But it takes enormous inner power to remain calm, composed, and silent. Not because you can't speak, but because you've chosen not to. Think about the times in your own life when someone said something hurtful. Maybe a friend betrayed you, or someone spread rumors behind your back, or a colleague at work tried to put you down in front of others. The natural human response is to fire back, to defend yourself, to attack, to shout louder than them so that your voice is heard. But what does that really achieve? Perhaps a momentary satisfaction, maybe even a temporary win in the argument. But in the long run, you're left exhausted, drained, and disturbed. Now compare that to a moment where you chose silence, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. That moment where you bit your tongue and smiled instead of responding with rage. That moment when you chose to walk away instead of stepping into a battle that had no value. You may not have won the argument in front of others, but deep inside, you preserved your peace. You maintained your dignity. That's the true win. That's strength. I remember a story of a young woman I met at a seminar. She was calm, graceful, and very soft-spoken. During our conversation, she shared something powerful. She said, "I used to argue back all the time. Every time someone challenged me, I'd jump in to prove myself. But I realized I was spending more trying to convince others than actually living in peace. My energy was scattered. So I stopped arguing. I started observing. And the more I chose silence, the more powerful I felt. Her words hit me hard. That's what real growth looks like. It's when you no longer need validation. You no longer crave victory in every conversation. You stop trying to be loud because you realize your silence is loud enough. Look around you. Some of the most respected women in life are not the ones who talk the most or argue the loudest. They're the ones whose presence is felt deeply even when they say nothing. Their energy is still. Their confidence is silent. Their strength doesn't come from raising their voice. It comes from their ability to not let external noise shake their internal peace. Silence teaches you control. It teaches you to manage your emotions rather than be managed by them. It teaches you the art of choosing your response, not being ruled by your reaction. And in that choice lies true power. A silent woman knows that not everything requires her attention. She knows that reacting to every situation only drains her spirit. So instead, she listens, she observes, she processes, and when she does speak, her words carry more weight because they're not frequent. They're intentional. There's also a deep spiritual angle to this. In almost every spiritual tradition, silence is considered sacred. Monks take vows of silence not because they have nothing to say, but because they are trying to deepen their understanding. In silence, you hear more, you understand more, you become more aware of others, of life, and most importantly, of yourself. In today's world, everyone wants to speak, but few want to understand. Everyone wants to win, but few want to grow. A silent woman has already chosen growth over ego. She has already won the battle within. That's why she doesn't get pulled into every external battle. You'll find her walking away from chaos, not because she's running from it, but because she refuses to be part of it. You'll find her smiling when others try to provoke her, not because she doesn't feel hurt, but because she values her peace more than proving a point. And you'll find her rising, quietly, gracefully, while others exhaust themselves in noise. So the next time someone tries to test your patience, remember, silence is not your weakness. It is your power. A silent woman is not silent because she has nothing to say. She is silent because she knows what's worth saying, and more importantly, what's not. In her silence lies a strength that noise will never understand. And in that strength, she rises, not above others, but above the need to compete at all. She listens to understand, not to react. In a world that's constantly waiting for its turn to speak, a woman who truly listens stands out. Not just because she is quiet, but because she is present. Most people listen with the intent to reply. They're forming their responses while the other person is still talking. But a silent woman has cultivated a deeper way of being. She listens with her heart, not just her ears. She listens not to win a debate, but to understand the emotion behind the words, the pain behind the anger, the story behind the silence. This quality doesn't come easily. It comes from pain, from reflection, from having spoken too soon and regretted it. It comes from having been misunderstood herself, from realizing how healing it feels when someone truly listens without interrupting, without judging, without waiting to correct you. She's been on the other side of that, so now she offers to others what she once wished someone had offered her. Presence. There's something magnetic about a woman who doesn't jump to conclusions. She doesn't assume. She doesn't raise her voice at the first sign of conflict. Instead, she listens quietly, even if the other person is yelling. She listens to what they say and also to what they don't say. Because often, the truth is hidden in the pauses, in the inconsistencies in the eyes. And when she finally speaks, her words are not reaction, they are reflection. I remember a woman I met during a talk on emotional intelligence. She shared a deeply personal story. Her teenage daughter had started acting distant, angry for no reason, slamming doors, refusing to talk. The mother's first instinct was to correct her behavior, to lecture her about respect and discipline. But something in her paused. Instead of reacting, she sat quietly next to her daughter one evening and simply said, "I'm here if you want to talk. I'm not going to ask you to change. I just want to know how you're really feeling." She didn't say anything else. She just waited. That night, her daughter broke down in tears. She had been bullied at school and didn't know how to talk about it. It was the mother's silence, her non-reaction, that made her daughter feel safe enough to open up. This is the power of listening to understand. It creates space for truth. It invites honesty. It makes the other person feel seen, not judged. And a silent woman understands this. She doesn't demand attention with noise. She earns respect with presence. Her silence becomes a cushion for others to rest their truth on. In professional life too, this kind of woman is often underestimated until it's too late. While others talk over each other in meetings, she observes. She listens not only to the facts being said, but also to the intentions behind them. And when she finally offers her thoughts, they are sharp, well-rounded, and usually the most impactful words in the room. Because they're not based on impulse, they're based on depth. She didn't speak to prove herself. She waited until she had something meaningful to say, snoozed alarms. That's why people listen when she talks. Because they know she's not speaking just to be heard. She's speaking because she truly understood. Listening is a form of love. When you listen with presence, without interruption, without judgment, you're telling the other person, you matter. Your story matters. I care enough to hear you fully. A silent woman extends this love without needing recognition. She's not trying to be the center of attention. She's trying to be the calm in the storm, the peace in the chaos, the soft ear in a noisy world. And sometimes the one she listens to most deeply is herself. In moments of solitude, when the world is quiet, she listens to her own thoughts, her wounds, her dreams, her intuitions. She doesn't run from silence like most people do. She embraces it. Because in silence, she can hear the whisper of truth that is often drowned out by the noise of daily life. She doesn't need external validation to guide her. Her compass is within, and she listens to it closely. This kind of woman may not always stand on stage or lead the loudest protests. But in her home, in her community, in her relationships, she brings transformation. Her ability to listen softens the hardest hearts. It repairs the broken bridges. It gives others the freedom to be themselves without fear of judgment. So if you've ever felt like your silence is a weakness, think again. If you listen more than you speak, don't let the world convince you that you need to shout to be powerful. Because true power lies in understanding. And understanding comes not from speaking, but from listening. A silent woman carries the wisdom of patience, the depth of empathy, and the grace of restraint. And through her silence, she teaches the world that presence is louder than noise. She guards her energy. In a world where everyone is constantly trying to pull you into their drama, opinions, and expectations, there's something deeply powerful about a woman who chooses to protect her peace. It's not that she doesn't care. It's not that she's disconnected or cold. It's that she knows the value of her time, her mind, and her emotional well-being, and she refuses to hand it over to things that do not deserve it. There's a maturity in her silence. She no longer feels the need to chase every conversation, argue every point, or prove her worth to anyone. She understands now that not every battle is hers to fight, and not every invitation into chaos must be accepted. You can almost feel her presence. She walks into a room and doesn't need to announce herself. Her stillness speaks for her. She's not cold. She's calm. She's not distant. She's selective. And that makes her magnetic. This is a woman who has likely learned the hard way. Maybe she once gave too much. Too much time to people who didn't value it. Too much energy to relationships that drained her. Too many explanations to people who never really cared to understand. She has been burned by overextending herself. She's stayed up late at night, fixing problems that were never hers. She's lost sleep trying to make everyone comfortable, while she herself sat with silent discomfort. But she woke up. She realized that being everything to everyone meant losing herself, and that price was too high. So now, she protects her peace like a treasure. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. She chooses silence over senseless conversations. She chooses distance over drama. She chooses healing over hostility. And slowly, her life begins to reflect that inner clarity. She surrounds herself with people who bring warmth, not war. She gives her time to things that nourish her soul, not drain it. She shows up fully where she feels safe, seen, and valued. And where she doesn't, she withdraws, not with hatred, but with wisdom. I once met a woman in her late 40s who had this aura of serenity around her. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, but people gravitated toward her. During a conversation, she shared something beautiful. She said, "I used to feel guilty for pulling back. I thought I was being selfish. But now I know, if I don't protect my energy, no one else will. And I've worked too hard for this peace to let anyone take it away." Her words stayed with me, because so many people, especially women, are taught to always give, always nurture, always be available. And in that constant giving, they forget to preserve anything for themselves. But a silent woman who guards her energy has learned that preservation is not selfish. It is sacred. She no longer entertains gossip because she knows it's a distraction from real growth. She doesn't waste her breath defending herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. She doesn't chase friendships or relationships that feel one-sided. If the energy doesn't feel right, she doesn't force it. She simply lets it go, because she trusts that what's meant for her will never need to be begged for. Her silence becomes a boundary, a soft, invisible wall that says, "You may come this far, but no further." Not everyone understands it, and not everyone likes it. But that's okay, because she didn't choose this path to please others. She chose it to protect herself. And the more she honors her energy, the more beautiful and peaceful her life becomes. She wakes up in the morning and doesn't scroll through chaos. She centers herself. She breathes. She reflects. She listens to the whispers of her soul. And throughout the day, she remains rooted. So when the winds of drama and negativity come rushing through, she doesn't get swept away. She stays grounded, silent, strong. People may call her mysterious, detached, or hard to read. But what they don't realize is that she's simply intentional. Her silence is not emptiness. It is full of choice. Every word she doesn't say, every argument she doesn't attend, every invitation she declines, is a decision to protect the most valuable asset she has, her energy. Because she understands something most people overlook. Not everything deserves a response. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Not every conflict deserves your peace. And once you start guarding your energy, you begin to attract peace, clarity, and true connection. So when you see a woman who sits quietly while others argue, who smiles gently while others seek attention, who walks away from noise without explanation, know that she is not weak. She is wise. She has done the inner work. She knows the cost of peace, and she pays it gladly. Because nothing is more powerful than a woman who has learned to guard her energy and chooses to live her life in silent strength. She speaks through her actions. In a time where everyone seems to have something to say, where words are thrown around carelessly and promises are made without intention, a woman who chooses to let her actions do the talking becomes unforgettable. She doesn't need to convince anyone with long speeches. She doesn't rush to defend her name when rumors float around. She doesn't post every move she makes for validation. Her actions are her language. Her life is her loudest statement. There is something deeply admirable about someone who doesn't advertise their growth, but shows it through how they carry themselves. Maybe she used to be reactive, explaining herself constantly, trying to make people see her side, correcting every misunderstanding. But she reached a point where she understood. The people who truly know her don't need an explanation, and those who constantly misjudge her won't change their opinion through words anyway. So she stopped talking about what she's going to do. She just started doing it. Quietly, consistently, powerfully. You can see it in the way she shows up. She might not always speak about her dreams, but she's building them brick by brick, day by day. She doesn't preach about loyalty, but she's always the one who's there when it counts. She doesn't go around telling people she's strong, but the way she carries her pain with grace, without asking for pity, says it all. And that's what makes her so powerful. There's no performance, just presence, just real, grounded action. I once knew a woman who went through a painful divorce. People whispered about her. They asked questions she never answered. They made assumptions. But she never fought back with words. She didn't go around telling her side of the story. Instead, she poured herself into her work. She started a small business from home, raised her children with love and consistency, and built a new life with quiet dignity. A few years later, she was thriving. And the same people who once talked behind her back were now praising her strength. Not because she shouted back at them, not because she explained every detail, but because her actions outlived their words. That's the kind of woman who leaves a legacy, one whose silence is not a void, but a container for meaningful action. She isn't passive, she's purposeful. She may not speak often, but when she does, people listen. Because they know her words are backed by real effort, real change, real integrity. She doesn't just talk about boundaries, she enforces them. She doesn't talk about love. She shows it in how she nurtures, supports, forgives, and grows. She doesn't talk about strength, she lives it. Every time she gets back up quietly after life knocks her down. Her friends know that if she says she'll be there, she will. Her family knows that her care doesn't come in grand speeches, but in the small details she pays attention to. Her coworkers know she won't talk over others in meetings, but her work will always speak for itself. Even strangers feel it, the calm, collected energy of a woman who doesn't need to prove anything because she's already doing the work. And when conflict arises, she doesn't add fuel to the fire. She responds with calm. If someone disrespects her, she doesn't lower herself to match their energy. She doesn't clap back or post cryptic messages online. She simply removes herself from environments that don't honor her and continues building her life in peace. Because she knows that her time and energy are too valuable to waste on empty battles. She understands that her progress will always be the best response. There's a quiet confidence that comes with this way of living. The kind of confidence that doesn't need an audience. The kind of confidence that shines in the way she walks, the way she treats others, the way she takes care of her responsibilities without needing applause. It's not about ego, it's about purpose. And when you meet a woman like that, you can feel her depth. You can sense that she's not here to impress the world. She's here to fulfill something much deeper, something internal. She doesn't want to be loud, she wants to be meaningful. So if you're someone who feels like your silence goes unnoticed or your consistency is taken for granted, don't be discouraged. Let your actions continue to speak. You don't need to announce your every move. You don't need to defend yourself to people who already made up their minds. Just keep showing up, keep growing, keep building, let your life tell your story, because in the end, people will remember how you made them feel. They'll remember the quiet strength you carried. And they'll remember that you didn't just talk about change, you became it. That is the power of a silent woman who speaks through her action. She has learned that not all battles are worth fighting. Life has a way of throwing challenges, insults, misunderstandings, and provocations at us like waves in a stormy sea. And for many years, she may have tried to fight every one of them. She argued to prove her innocence, defended her choices, corrected every lie, and gave her energy to every single conflict. But over time, something inside her began to shift. She realized that while she might have won some of those battles, she was slowly losing her peace. She was drained, emotionally exhausted, constantly living in reaction rather than intention. So she made a choice, a quiet, deliberate, powerful choice. Not every battle deserves her sword. Not every insult needs an answer. Not every wrong needs to be righted by her hands. Some things, she learned, are best left to silence, to time, and to karma. That doesn't mean she became weak. It means she became wise. She understood that maturity isn't about fighting more. It's about knowing when to walk away with grace. You see, when a woman decides that she will no longer participate in every war that knocks at her door, she is not giving up. She's growing up. She no longer wastes her days trying to convince people who are determined to misunderstand her. She doesn't feel the need to explain her every move or defend her character to those who gossip behind her back. Because she knows that truth has a way of rising and lies always reveal themselves in time. There's a certain beauty in the way she now chooses her silence. It's not the silence of defeat. It's the silence of self-respect. It's the silence that says, I have better things to do with my life than argue with those who have no interest in peace. She's learned that every minute spent trying to win the approval of someone who never valued her is a minute stolen from her own growth. And that's a price she's no longer willing to pay. I remember hearing the story of a woman who ran a successful business while caring for her elderly parents. Despite her responsibilities and hard work, there were people around her who criticized her every move. Family members who questioned her choices, friends who doubted her motives, competitors who spread rumors. For years, she tried to fix her image. She explained, justified, apologized, until one day she stopped. She said, "Let them think what they want. My life will speak for itself." And it did. Over time, those voices faded into silence, and her quiet consistency won more respect than her explanations ever could. That's the essence of choosing your battles. It's not about apathy, it's about wisdom. She now asks herself, will this matter 5 years from now? Will this argument bring me peace or just pull me deeper into drama? And more often than not, she chooses to protect her energy rather than prove her point. Because she understands something most people don't, that peace is more precious than being right. And this shift reflects in every part of her life. In relationships, she no longer begs to be understood. She no longer chases people who leave or tries to fix what keeps breaking. She lets go with kindness, not bitterness, with closure, not chaos. In her career, she doesn't fight for validation from those who overlook her. She creates value so undeniable that she becomes impossible to ignore. And in her personal life, she sets boundaries that protect her peace without needing to explain why they're necessary. This mindset has given her something priceless: freedom. She's no longer held hostage by the opinions of others. She's no longer burdened by the need to always respond. She's free to focus on what truly matters: her growth, her goals, her joy, and in that freedom she blooms silently, steadily, powerfully. People often wonder what changed, why she's quieter now, why she doesn't engage in the same circles or respond to every comment. Some may think she's become cold or distant. But those who truly know her know the truth. She's just become more selective, more intentional. She has learned the art of protecting her peace by walking away from noise. And perhaps that's the greatest battle she's won, the one within herself. The battle between needing to be heard and choosing to be at peace. The battle between proving her worth and knowing it deep within. The battle between reacting to the world and responding to her soul. So, when you see her walking away from an argument, choosing silence over shouting, choosing stillness over struggle, don't mistake it for weakness. Understand that you're witnessing a woman who has mastered the art of choosing her battles, and in doing so, she has chosen a life that doesn't just look peaceful on the outside, but actually feels peaceful on the inside. She has learned that not all battles are worth fighting. There was a time when she felt the need to respond to every criticism, correct every misunderstanding, and prove herself in every room she walked into. She thought silence meant weakness, that not defending herself meant accepting blame. But life, in its subtle and often painful way, taught her otherwise. It taught her that not every fight leads to victory, and not every victory brings peace. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away, not because you are afraid to fight, but because you finally understand that some wars are not yours to win. In the beginning, it was not easy. Her silence was mistaken for guilt, her restraint interpreted as defeat. People thought they could walk over her simply because she didn't shout back. But she watched, she waited, And slowly, she realized something powerful: silence can speak louder than words. Grace can be more disarming than aggression. And peace can be a far greater reward than being right. She began to conserve her energy. Not every debate on social media needed her voice. Not every personal attack required a counterattack. She understood that those who throw stones are often battling their own insecurities. She refused to let them project that chaos onto her soul. There's a quote she once came across: "Don't get in the mud with pigs. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it." That one line changed the way she engaged with the world. It's not that she stopped caring. She still feels deeply. She still hurts when misunderstood, still flinches when judged unfairly. But now she lets that pain teach her, not control her. She lets her stillness deliver the message that her peace is not for sale. And that lesson ripples through her actions, her choices, her relationships. Take her friendships, for example. There was a time she would hold on to people who hurt her just to avoid conflict. She would explain, justify, and overextend herself, hoping they'd see her heart. Now, she pays attention to how she feels in their presence. If the relationship drains more than it fills, she doesn't make noise. She quietly creates space. She exits not with slamming doors, but with silent steps that lead her back to peace. In her workplace, she once believed that speaking louder meant being respected, that the one who talks most confidently is the one who wins. But now she knows confidence doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet focus that finishes the job with excellence while others are still talking about it. She lets her results speak. She doesn't engage in office gossip or power struggles. She shows up, does her work, and leaves her mark in ways that words never could. She's also learned to let people be wrong about her. This perhaps was one of the hardest lessons of all. The younger version of her wanted everyone to like her, to understand her, to see her true intentions. But now she knows, if someone is committed to misunderstanding her, no amount of explaining will change their mind. So, she doesn't waste her breath. She knows her truth, and that's enough. This evolution hasn't made her cold. It's made her wise. It's softened her in places and strengthened her in others. Now, when conflict arises, she doesn't rush to respond. She breathes. She asks herself, will this matter a year from now? Does this align with the woman I'm becoming? If the answer is no, she lets it pass. Not because she's weak, but because she's strong enough to choose what deserves her energy. She now walks through life with a calm resolve. People notice it. They may not always understand it, but they feel it. There's something different about her now. It's not arrogance, it's assurance. It's not detachment, it's discernment. She no longer feels the need to win arguments. She's too focused on winning her peace. And that's the beauty of a woman who has learned that not all battles are worth fighting. She isn't avoiding life, she's choosing life. She's choosing the path of least resistance, not because it's easier, but because it leads to more joy. She's choosing to fight only when it matters, only when the cause is worthy, only when her soul says yes. The rest she lets it go, with a quiet smile, with a graceful exit, with the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Because the woman who has learned which battles are worth fighting has already won the war within herself. And that victory is more powerful than any argument could ever be. Let me leave you with this. When you find yourself in the storm of criticism, pressure, or misunderstanding, remember the silent woman, not because she had nothing to say, but because she had everything to protect: her peace, her energy, her growth. So, to all the women listening today, your silence is sacred. Let it be your loudest roar. You don't need to explain your peace. Just live it, because you understand what noise never will.